Do you listen to Joe Rogan a lot?
I have listened to him in the past. I stopped
Yeah.
listening to him when I started thinking he was too like conservative for my taste, but
Mm.
or wacky. But I mean, his podcast really set a standard.
Yeah.
I feel like it really like it was the first one where it was like that loose and conversational, where it was like felt informal, and it felt like
Mm-hmm.
you were hearing the real thing from the people that he would bring on, because it was like
Mm-hmm.
he made them comfortable enough that they weren't, you know,
Yeah.
they weren't like doing their PR version of whatever they thought. They were like really telling it like they thought, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the genius of Joe Rogan, I think, is that he like relaxes people into that level of honesty,
Yeah.
and he gets juicy details that other people don't get, you know.
But and he gets people like Elon Musk to smoke weed, for example,
Exactly. I mean,
which is something. Where else would you get that to
where
happen?
else? Who? I mean, how did that even happen? You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when that happened, people were like, "How did his people let him do that?" And, you know, like, what was he thinking? He's the CEO.
Yeah.
Like, why in the world would he think that that's okay? And it's like, because it is okay. It's just weed. Like, he lives in a state where it's legal, and people need to calm down. It's not like he smoked crack on the podcast with Joe Rogan. He smoked a little weed. They were drinking a little whiskey. Like, big deal. Plenty of people
Yeah.
do that and have done it since. I actually thought that was, you know, smart. I think it actually went well for him.
For Elon?
Yeah, like there's a certain amount of backlash, but then other people were like, "Oh, this guy's totally cool. Like he's like a man of the people." You know, kind of like made him seem more down to earth than a lot of CEOs come off.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, for me it did.
I don't think it's true. I don't think he's
Yeah.
really that down to earth, but you know, at the time, it made it seem that way. Yeah.
But that long form conversation, people told him that he should cut it and do
really?
like clips.
Rollins?
But yeah, and it ended up being. I was talking about this with my brother yesterday, no, or 2 days ago. How he was telling me that in cinema, that the average shot length has gone down. Where it used to be like 12 seconds for in like 1970. I don't remember the year exactly, but that now it's like
12
5 seconds.
Right, if even, dude. I would
If
say
even.
most shots are 4 or less. Cause I count, since that's like my field. It's like camera
Exactly.
stuff.
Exactly.
I think most are 4 or less, but it does depend on the movie. Like if it's the genre. Like if it's drama, longer. If it's action, a second, 2 seconds. Plenty of shots are only a second or 2, which is
Yeah.
literally right at the limit of what your brain can even make sense of. Like a 1 second shot,
Yeah.
that's your brain can't go faster than that in most cases. Like it really can't.
You think that's a limit?
I think
Is there a
that's the
limit to
Yeah.
eventually what movies where it's just a second?
Yeah, I think
clip.
that's the limit. I think that's the limit. I mean, people also push the envelope on spaces like TikTok, where you have that time limitation, and people are getting really creative with like how much they can convey in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever it is. I don't actually know because I'm not on TikTok much, but I think it's like
Why not?
30 seconds.
Is there a reason? Is it too active? I'm not on it either.
No, I mean, so I've twice tried. So I have an account, and I've twice tried to like dig in a little bit and like some content and let it figure out who I am and suggest stuff and try to get to know it better and think about, all right, what would I put on this? But the thing is, I hadn't found a lot of content I really liked, and so that was my biggest turnoff. But I've talked, and for what it's worth, you know, like the kind of stuff I like is probably like a little bit more like science, educational, history, like informative stuff, not purely entertainment. I'm usually not I don't seek that entertainment out on a platform like TikTok. But people have told me there's tons of that on there, tons and tons. So I'm like, okay, I'm just not giving it enough time.
Tons and tons of informational
Yeah,
content
apparently.
in that TikTok way that is very.
I know. So, I mean, that sounds cool. I think it's a little challenging to explain certain scientific concepts or whatever the subject may be in 30 seconds, but if you're doing a string of them and each one is 30 seconds, it can completely work. And I've heard that the studios are even modeling or even trying to grab a piece of the market share in TikTok, which is like what, biggest in the world probably as an entertainment platform. They're trying to grab a piece of the market share by taking some of their actual regular serial TV shows and cutting them into 30-second clips and releasing them that way before they go big on the streamer. So for a couple of shows that were basically Gen Z focused in terms of the market that they were trying to hit. They just started on TikTok,
Makes more sense.
dropped it there for like I think a couple of weeks, and then they pull it from TikTok and release it on like HBO Max or whatever. So I mean, even something that's obviously supposed to be understood more slowly can be, you know, put onto a 30-second format. But it takes a lot of work to cut it up like that.
But these are 30-second clips, or these are 30 seconds, a bunch of clips taken and kind of crammed together for TikTok?
No, they don't mess with the edit. They just cut the edit every 30 seconds so that when it comes together, it feels like the normal thing. But see, the experience of that on TikTok must be really wild, because it's like like loading for a second or something. It's like flipping to the next video every 30 seconds. I mean, that's just like, for me, I'm like a purist. I'm like, I wouldn't want that, but you know. And they have to be vertical. The video has to be vertical, because that's the format. So they also have to make choices about reframing, because everything's shot horizontally for TV.
That used to be a thing, right? Like, people hated vertical video, and it was a thing like, don't shoot vertical video.
Yeah.
But the form factor won.
It did. It really did. That's the perfect way to put it too. Like, form factor dictates format.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really does.
Yeah. Can you imagine using TikTok horizontally?
I mean, I would
and
love
then,
it.
and then swiping.
Right.
It wouldn't be TikTok. I don't know.
Right. But we also don't know like what the phones are going to end up being like, you know, or what the equivalent of a phone will end up being like in like 10 years, 20 years. I mean, maybe again the form changes the format again. Maybe vertical doesn't win, because I honestly will tell you, I think vertical is pretty limiting. Our eyes see more horizontally. That's why we developed that format. It's to mimic your real life, you know, imaging. So vertical is pretty limiting. I mean, it'd be like if your vision of the world were more like this, obviously, and you know, it doesn't give you good peripheral vision. And so, and the problem with that really, when it comes down to it, is that if we're talking about content or subject matter in the real world, the up and down is less interesting. It's sky and ground, you know? There's just less information there. Things aren't happening there. Things are happening left to right in our world. And so, in a gaming world or something that's created from scratch for a vertical format, it may be great. You can optimize for it. But if we're recording content that takes place in our world, you know, I think in the long run, phone companies and even like the design of these, you know, platforms, they might start to want to go wider again, and that might be a phone that flips open and has that seamless glass hinge or whatever it is, you know, or maybe there is some future version of goggles that's sleek and easy for everyone to afford, and you just watch it that way. You know,
you don't think it will continue vertical?
I don't think
It's something that we can get used to it, like that we can. That will switch the way we see things so much that we just get used to the vertical.
What do you think? Do you like vertical, or does it bother you at all? Or you don't
I never think about it.
You don't think about it, yeah.
Oh, and I think for many people, they like because you work in film.
Right.
You're kind of aware of how this affects. But for I think many people, they're just blind to it, and it becomes their vision of what video is like gets warped by that.
Yeah.
Without them noticing, like for me.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. They're more focused on the content itself than anything about the delivery format or anything about the...
Yeah. And even the fact that we're so used to like things being on this little screen all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
There's something to it, because I mean, I started using this big monitor, and I realized now that makes my laptop feel small.
Which is hilarious, because compared to our phone, it's like enormous. Yeah.
And I wonder if it switches like how we see the world. Like, do you think because we're looking at our phone so much, and our eyes are in one centralized place, that it changes the way we focus even out in the world?
Right. That's a profound question, and I think probably the answer is yes. You know, I don't have any data to support it, but I have heard people talk about that who are more like looped into the types of fields that would study that kind of thing, behavioral change, and it makes sense. I mean, you know, you really do get into a hyper focused state when your task or your like engagement is in such a small spot. But then again, you know, let's talk about, like, for example, over time, over, you know, human history. I mean, basket weaving, you know, grain picking. There's all kinds of artistry, you know, painting, whatever it was. There's always been tasks that humans engage in that are extremely focused in a point of focus. So that, you know, maybe it's not so bad for us. But this is different because this isn't the same thing as a task. This is like an experience of the world with the internet, right?
The portal.
Yeah.
Anything
so it's
you
like
can
your
think of.
portal door is like that small, which is a different thing than basket weaving and focusing on some work in your hands, you know, which I think they've even proven is like really good for your brain. You know what I mean? It's like really good for you to knit or to do a small task like that.
Whereas that,
they've got all the studies in the world to say it's not so good for your brain.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's a profound question. Like, does it, when you look away from that, do you now feel that more opportunity and information is available here than it is here? That's sad, honestly, but it's also
true.
a little bit true, right? It's a little bit true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so. What amazes me is how quickly now you can get to whatever is in your mind.
Yeah.
You have a thought. You can find content that resonates with that thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about toxic shame and or today, for example, vulnerability and joy. Right? And I can go on YouTube in less than a second, type in what I want to search, and I have a video, and it's so fast.
Yeah.
So I not only get caught in my thoughts now, my thoughts can link to content that is infinite on topics and stay there.
Yeah.
Until I flip out of it. But it's also very useful.
You go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go deep down that rabbit hole if you want to. Have you also had the experience where you were talking about something and then it's something about that comes up on one of the platforms?
Oh yeah, of course.
That's pretty.
Of course, I think everybody has had that.
Unnerving to me. Yeah. I really don't like it. I mean, and it's like within the same day. I mean, it's like immediate. Which, of course, why wouldn't it be? Why would it take a week for the system to figure it out? Of course, it won't. But there's something about that immediacy that's like even more upsetting to me. I'd rather see it like a week later. Like, all right, at least
Instead of
a minute, you know. Instead, it's like I talk about like this pair of shoes got a hole in them, and then 5 minutes later out the door, it's a shoe ad, and I'm like, fuck, dude.
How did they know?
And it's like, to me, so the whole thing about that is, so many sources will tell you it's not listening. You know, like Google will tell you they're not listening. They're not actively listening. How can that possibly be true? You know what I mean? How can that possibly be true? And Apple devices are also known for having better privacy than most devices, most hardware. It's like part of their ethos there, you know. But obviously, it's allowing some kind of, microphone surveillance. I can't understand otherwise how it's.
You think so?
Well, I do, because those targeted things don't pop up when I'm like actually in the process of searching for that stuff. Like that makes sense. Okay, you put it into your browser, it's in your search history, duh. It's just living in your cache and it's getting taken by all kinds of information phishing from different companies, right? They're selling your info. But I'm talking about, you just talked about it, and then you see it. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So somehow
I can't give you examples, but it has.
Yeah.
It's freaky. Like, oh, there was one. Yeah, the one where someone mentioned something about some organization, and then it just came up on my phone.
Right?
And that was way too...
coincidental.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was too much.
Scary coincidence. Yeah, exactly. You can't even just say like, oh, well, maybe this is just a mass marketed shoe ad. It's like, no, I was talking about like, blue maize corn. and
Mm-hmm.
Louis May's corn material started popping. You know what I mean? It's like, that is not a coincidence. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, so that's one thing that is going on that's kind of wild. And then like you have AI.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and who knows, with all the potential for
Yeah.
deep fakes and everything, how much that might like confuse our experience of reality.
God.
There's just a lot going on, man.
Mm-hmm.
A lot going on.
And there's more and more like in these devices happening, and like we're recording this conversation, and that's gonna go there too.
This is here.
It's gonna go live there.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking about earlier. We talked about shot length and how, if you think about this, right, this is a shot.
Right.
If you think about it.
Right.
And I wonder if part of that kind of trend that we're going towards shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, like we need things to switch. Mm-hmm. And how also like just life as it is gets boring, and we need that. Mm-hmm. Where else can we get that shot change? Mm-hmm. And it's by pulling this thing out and then, that's another way. It's like
switching it up frequently, because that's what we become accustomed to.
Yeah, like oh wow.
Yeah.
The same thing. It's strange.
100%. Have you
get a lot of views.
Have you ever like your phone was dead or not had your phone and been in a social environment where you just had to sort of like sit there with your hands by your side or in your pockets and kind of like make a choice about like, all right, am I gonna not talk to anyone, or am I gonna engage somebody to pass the time because I'm a little bored or it's a little awkward? You ever had that moment where you're like, damn, this is what it was like for my parents their whole lives, and their parents and their parents and their parents,
and everyone,
and not us, and how bizarre, like how can we not be fundamentally different? They had to spark conversation. They had to have social skills to some extent, because otherwise, how would you pass the time when you're with people in an elevator, in a bus, in the office, lunchroom, like
newspaper, a book.
Right. So you had other forms of media, which was great. But what gets me now is like I'll be at lunch with colleagues. You only get a 30-minute lunch break most of the time, and we are together all day. So I'll put that out there. That's one reason why I can understand this kind of behavior. But on the 30-second lunch break, a lot of times I'll notice a bunch of us on our phones.
The 30-minute.
And not talking at all, and just on our phones. And you kind of have to wonder, like, in 1970, would a bunch of people have been reading magazines, or would they have been talking while they had lunch? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm sure people who see each other every day, they deserve to be able to read a magazine. They don't need to have to socialize with the same person they see over and over and over. But again, like, in my particular circumstance, it's different people, job to job. So you can't even say that like people are sick of each other or deserve a break. So it's a little bit more asocial feeling, And I think that makes me kind of miss the old days when you just didn't have a phone, and so you were just like, all right, let's talk about something. Who's got the juice, or like what's interesting.
And there's less and less things that are uniting us. There's TV, for example. Now you watch your own thing.
Right.
I watch what I watch. Everything's amazing because it's tailored to us.
Right. But
there's no, it's not like Simpsons at 7 p.m. on Sunday.
Right.
And then on Monday we both know that happened.
Yeah.
There's a shared awareness of a show and a time, which now it's all personalized, which is awesome.
Right. But less water cooler worthy because it's not shared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what are the new skills that need to be developed if you don't have that shared experience, or like shared awareness? If there aren't so many shared events anymore.
Right.
You listen to your music on Spotify that's tailored to you, and I listen to mine it's tailored to mine.
Maybe that explains like how virality came along and meme culture. Because those came along at the same time that people's interests began to diverge and become extremely niche based on their interests with what you're talking about. So we sort of lost like appointment TV and like mass culture events around the same time that like virality became a thing and meme culture became a thing. And maybe that's because like in the absence of the traditional shared experience of the Cosby finale or whatever, we needed something that everyone could be like, oh my god, have you seen the thing?
Yeah.
and that kind of filled that hole. There was a little vacuum there. Because memes really are like that, you know, viral moments. That is the thing that at the water cooler, even though everyone watched their own show last night, something different, they might all have heard about
the viral video,
the thing Kanye said or whatever, you know what I mean?
which happens less to me. Are you connected in that way? Like, because I many times don't know what is going on.
I'm an old man. Yeah, I'm like way tuned out. I'm like embarrassingly tuned out. But so, what would we need to be tuned into to know? Like TikTok or like?
It's so fragmented. I don't think there's any one thing anymore.
Yeah, I don't.
It's just I don't know. Some people were watching Mr. Beast. I don't know, and like other people, and everyone's in their silo of. Only thing I can think of, Super Bowl, maybe that unites people. I haven't. I do not. Sports.
Sports is big in the. I mean, global, but especially in the U.S.
World Cup.
Yeah, World Cup.
Can you think of what other things are
Olympics,
at the Olympic sports?
Basically, I think some arts connect people. Like some major films still kind of break through and become
like Barbie, for example. Barbie film became this huge thing.
Yeah, and that was a big deal because they're struggling. They thought they were struggling to be able to make those kinds of cultural impacts anymore with film, especially at movie theaters. And you know, I think that really made it clear that like that's just simply not true. You know, you had Maverick, the Top Gun movie. I think that was a pretty big deal to a lot of people. Barbie. I don't know about Oppenheimer in terms of global appeal, but these things can still happen. But you know, I think they're fewer and farther between since we are sort of fragmented in our own ways.
And it's even I mean, in my family, I notice my parents who used to not understand why we were all on our phone all the time are on their phone now all the time. You know, my dad watches TV and he's got his phone.
So they now too are on their phones?
Yeah, they're on their phones.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Because it's tailored to you.
Right, exactly.
It's your comfort zone.
Exactly.
That it's a digital comfort zone.
Do you catch yourself when you like pull it out and open it up and you realize there's absolutely nothing that you need to see or probably have to see and you're just doing it?
So many times it's an impulse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, right?
Exactly. I'll check WhatsApp, like, do I have a message?
Yeah.
And it feels good. Oh, someone thought of me.
Right. That's the hope. I feel like that is the hope. Like, you actually touched on something really important there. Like, I think for most of us, entertainment's great, but the best thing that can possibly come from the phone is this feeling of validation. Someone cares about me. Which is,
coming through this device, where you have someone that you could have that in person, but it's...
Yeah, you could actually invest in this relationship that's real at your lunch table and build new people or build a network of people who might care about you in the future. You know, you have to invest in that. You don't get it right away. Or you could ignore them all in the hopes that you'll get a little bit of affirmation through your phone.
A little hit.
With someone that you already know. But it's like you're not expanding your network, you know? You're not increasing your social capital, as they say. So it is, I think it is a little bit, it's a little unfortunate, but hey, phones aren't going to get put back in the box, you know?
I mean, and there's a reason why we carry them with us everywhere. I always kind of know where,
of course,
and it's always, I go to sleep and I know where I have to place my hand and reach out to grab it.
Exactly. It's important.
So it's almost, it's like a part of me, though it's not physically attached to me.
Yeah.
And that brings a sense, I think to me, it brings a sense of tension. Because it's so much. A phone is not, it's so many things. It's so much.
It is.
It's,
it's a Swiss Army knife for
it's
sure.
everything.
Yeah.
But it's like pulling out a Swiss Army knife for checking the time, for any little thing.
Yeah. Tons of work things that are attached to your actual livelihood.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost cease to be a functional person without a cell phone. I feel like that's often something that we experience when our phone breaks. Or we actually are without it for a few days until we get another.
This is a superpower. Just I can call someone, communicate and hear their voice whenever I want.
Right.
Wherever I am, almost.
No, but seriously, in terms of ceasing to be a person, like a functional
Mhm.
person in society, it is crazy that it's that much of an Achilles heel. Like, if you lose your phone, you don't have your phone, you could miss jobs.
Yeah.
People could become worried about where you are and your actual safety. You could burn some bridges short term until you can tell them, oh, sorry, I didn't have my
'Cause
phone.
you didn't
But
text,
like, yeah,
yeah.
you know,
You didn't text
you're
me back.
ghosting people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You might not be able to find your way around. You might physically get lost. Most of us don't really know how to get around anymore that well. We don't know the city like people used to know it. You know what I mean?
No.
And I could go on. I mean, there's just tons of things. There's just so much of our existence is made possible now by that device. That like to not have it is to become so much less capable in life. And that's why it's like people who are really poor, people who are living on the street, who have it hard, you know, a lot of them have phones actually, which is amazing.
Mhm.
And that's an interesting thing that you see. You know, it's
Yeah.
like this person is living in a makeshift shelter. You know, they're getting wet when it rains. They're cold when it's cold. They've got it rough, but somehow they have figured out how to have a cell phone and how to pop open a street lamp pole and wire electricity. Probably thanks to the phone and the internet and the ability to
Yeah.
YouTube University, and keep their phone charged and maintain, you know, some really important like abilities, you know, that
I've never seen that. I've never seen
I've
the
seen it. I've
homeless
seen it a
people
lot,
with cell.
actually. Yeah.
I've seen some, yeah, with cell phones.
Yeah, they'll be in their tent watching stuff at night, you know, just like everybody else, trying to relax, trying to not think about everything else for a minute, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost like we should have a program where we hand out like phones for people like that. Like they need it more than
It's
anybody.
it's a essential. It's an
It could
essential
save
now.
their lives, dude.
Basic need now.
Yeah, it could save their lives. We should be handing them out.
But it's so nice when you disconnect from it. At least
Of
for me.
course. There's no better feeling. It's like,
I
oh
feel
yeah,
so.
like
But why don't we do it?
primal life.
Have you ever said, all right, today I'm just gonna leave my cell phone?
I don't do it
Yeah.
enough. Do you do it much?
I get anxious.
Yeah.
And yeah, like how am I gonna do all these things that we just mentioned
Right.
without it?
Exactly. What kind of a day can I really have?
Mhm.
Will it be fun? Will I get bored? Am I limited too much to enjoy the day?
Yeah.
Yeah,
God,
exactly.
we need them.
Wait, so you said you were
Uh-huh.
thinking about vulnerability. What was that about?
Vulnerability. Yeah, I was thinking, because for me, it's always been easy to share, not always, but at least the last few years, it's been easy to share like negative stuff about myself. And I thought that maybe that was being vulnerable. Look, I'm sharing something that's a bit ugly about me, and that's vulnerable. But I've been thinking about it a little more, and I'm trying to figure out what is vulnerability really. And I think that vulnerability involves trust, and not having control over the way that someone, putting yourself in a
Right.
position where you're not,
Right.
you don't know how the other person is going to react, and that could include them rejecting you. That could
Right.
include them reacting in some way that you don't know. It's out of your control,
Right.
and that's vulnerable.
And it's evidence that you're
Mhm.
allowing that by the way that you frame whatever you say or do, right? Like it's like you don't couch it all in this packaging that's like, but you need to like me when I admit this thing about myself. It's more like you just vulnerably,
It's
just
naked.
frankly
Yes.
put it on the table, and then it's like what they do with it.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna try
And I realize that for
Yeah.
me, and I think of past, my past relationships, and I wasn't good at that.
Mm.
I could share negative stuff about me. I could complain, but that's comfortable. That was comfortable for me, sadly. But sharing, hey, I'm going through this right now. Can you help me? Like that question,
Yeah.
can you help?
Yeah.
Impossible for me.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
100% identify with that.
Yeah.
Super hard for me to ask people for help, and it took me a long time to realize that. Like only in my 30s did it occur to me, really.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's super common for a lot of guys too. Like it might be. We're not raised to ask for a lot of help. You know, we're raised
No.
to be pretty independent and self-sufficient. That's sort of what we are told our role
Well,
is.
maybe, but maybe it depends on how we were raised. But then
Yeah.
I'm very careful now with thinking, whenever I think, oh, this is how it is for everyone, I like really pay attention to that because
Yeah.
it might be, no, it's not the same
Yeah.
for everyone.
It's true. You have to be careful about subjectivity of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I start, because, yeah, I used to think that was the same for everyone, but I'm sure there are people out there who, when they are going through something, instead of isolating like I thought everyone did,
Mhm.
they go out and they look for people who can support them.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
They do that different behavior. But for me,
Yeah,
because
that's their instinct.
it wasn't normal, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't see anyone doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. So what does it feel like when you
Mhm.
when you recognize one of those moments where you have to like ask for help? Like, what's the feeling of like resistance, if you had to describe it?
I think it's connected to, in the past, right? If I felt like I needed help, it was automatically kind of attacked by this feeling of shame, like, oh,
Mhm.
I keep this to myself and then
Right.
isolate.
Yeah.
And I got a taste of it the other day. I was driving back home and like feeling a bit of the shame, just shame, like
Yeah.
now I can identify it, right? Whereas
Yeah,
before I would just think that was me and I would
Yeah.
be reacting to it. But just identifying, oh yeah, I'm feeling shame, separates me from it.
Mm.
And then I also felt a little bit sad. I just felt sad.
Mm.
And I think simply that's one of the first steps to at least like being even intimate with yourself and knowing what you feel. That's been a long journey for me, and
Mm.
I'm barely learning how to actually just feel what I feel, you know, before it
Oh,
gets
yeah.
before it gets attacked by
Right.
shame and hide, you know. And that was so common for me, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how to deal with emotions. They didn't reach me before they just got buried.
Yeah. Or
And so-
disguised kind of.
or
as other
disguised by
things.
into something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was driving home feeling a bit sad and just like being aware that, oh, I'm feeling sad.
Mhm.
I'm feeling a bit alone.
And then just kind of like sitting with that.
Sitting with it, and
Accepting.
I think I like, oh, I hope there are people out there, thinking that in my head.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine called me, and I had just thought of him, and he asked me, hey man, so how are you? How do you feel? And normally what I would do, and I think this is an example of that vulnerability. Normally what I would do, like, I would kind of shove whatever I'm feeling. Oh yeah, I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm doing
yeah,
good.
This is it right here. This is the
Exactly.
moment. Yeah.
Right? And just like persona and go into not talking about it. But then I wanted to give him an honest answer, and like I told him, I'm feeling a bit sad,
Yeah.
a bit alone.
Yeah. How do you react?
And he's like, oh man, like, and then he asked me a few more questions, and I learned, wait a minute, people cannot support you
Right.
with what you're going through if you don't. First, if you're not even able to feel it, and you don't even know what you're going through and what you're actually feeling,
That's so true. Yeah.
then you don't even know.
Right.
And that's the one step.
Right.
But let's say you know, and then you hide it.
Right.
Then no one can see that. No one can empathize with it.
Yeah.
It was really crazy. I shared that with him. He told, he kind of, he was able to like be with me with that feeling.
Sure.
And I felt supported. Like I felt it kind of changed the feeling. It dissipated.
100%. Yeah.
And I learned that.
That's a perfect example of the kind of situation where it's like a split-second decision, and you can either bury it or you can really own up and tell someone like it really is, And you're like, wow, how are they gonna react? Are they gonna be like, all right, well, I gotta go, homie,
Yeah.
Or are they gonna like lean into it and be like, okay, what's up? What's
Yeah.
going on? And that's kind of when you know who your friends are, though. So it also has the power to really reveal like who in your life is like there for you, like no matter what, either way.
Yeah. And I
None of
think
my
back,
good
man.
friend,
Oh, go ahead.
Or just none of my close friends. I would have no problem hearing that from any of them. I would be probably even more interested in talking to them just to help them out. You know what I mean? Get to the bottom of it if we can.
Yeah, really. Where like my 2 weeks prior to that, because that happened this week. I mean, like Wednesday, I think. 2 weeks prior or a week and a half prior, if I felt that sadness and he asked me that, I would be right away feel shame. In my head, I would be thinking, oh my God, he's gonna think,
Mm-hmm.
fucking Michael, he's always going through something.
Right,
Fucking
that's the
Michael,
other
oh
one.
my God, you
Yeah,
bring
yeah,
people down.
yeah, exactly.
You're always sad, you
Yeah,
know? That would
like
be the
negative
thought.
Nancy kind of worry. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I didn't.
Which is kind of real, because there are some people out there who
Mhm.
are just whine, 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 whine. But that's not what we're talking about, and that's an important distinction. Like a lot of people will complain about things in their life because they don't know what's really making them unhappy, and no one wants to hear someone complain about things. Just fucking traffic, my fucking boss, blah blah blah. Like that kind of complaining is not something that people can really help
Yeah.
you with, because you're not giving them things that are true, basically, really. Like the truth is deeper down. Like you knew, I think, in that moment with your friend what was truly bothering you.
Yeah.
Or at least you knew that the true problem was just that you were sad. Not somebody did this to me, or I can't fix this problem. It was just I'm sad. That's something they can work with. You know what I mean? So when you reveal underneath all the layers of bullshit what the real thing is, if you're able to hear that inside yourself and see that inside yourself, then you can give people the thing that they need to help you. You know? And that's a really important distinction, right? So it's like the difference between us complaining and us being quiet with our mind enough to get to the bottom of what's really bothering us, which is usually pretty deep, honestly. Like there's a lot of layers of noise and complexity in our mind. A lot. You know what I mean? And we think so much stuff is externally to blame. But oftentimes it really is. We do have a lot of, I'm going to use the word control here with a grin, because obviously nothing's ever fully controllable, but we do have an influence with our internal decisions, where we steer. Day by day, I'm going to steer a little bit more away from that, because I'm recognizing it's making me feel sad, actually. It's shiny and bright, and I thought I wanted it. My ego wants it, but it's actually making me kind of sad. So I'm going to start to let that go now and steer away from that. That's the kind of place you got to get to do like the serious shifting that will make you a happier person in life. But you've got to quiet all that noisy bullshit that is your brain and all your thoughts, and stop necessarily blaming all these external factors, because really it's like, it's a luxury a little bit, because if you're in a really hard spot, sometimes you really, really have very little opportunity or choice. But if you can get a little bit past that, there's usually some choice about which direction you sail.
I used to treat them like the same. I couldn't hear the difference, and sadly, I hurt people because I treated people's emotions the way I treated my own emotions. And when someone shared their feelings, I didn't know what that was like. I just took it as it's maybe I wasn't as empathetic as I could have been, and but now I'm empathetic with myself, that I realize why I couldn't do it.
Right.
But yeah, it was something very new for me to just be able to share that feeling, feeling sad, not without shame, just like, oh, here's how I feel.
Yeah.
You asked me, and I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah.
That was very, very new, and it felt vulnerable. That felt vulnerable.
Does it feel helpful though, when you put it out there,
Yeah, because it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was complaining. I just felt like,
right.
Oh yeah, I feel this way.
Right.
It's also a color of a life as well.
Yeah, it's just a fact.
And and to get support or just caring on the other end of that.
Right.
Touched my heart. Right. I gave this guy a hug. I saw him yesterday and told him thank you.
Yeah.
He really helped.
Yeah, I mean that's an important difference, that it's like you're not, we think, if I tell someone I'm sad, I'm going to burden them, I'm going to put negativity in their lap, and it's like, no, you're not necessarily.
Exactly. That was the fear.
Complaining you are. You know what I mean? Complaining, again, something they can't do anything about. They can't fix the traffic. For you to sit there and complain about traffic, what are they going to do? Roll their eyes.
That's a hard one. What do you say to?
Yeah, it's silly shit. It's like we're all going to complain about it, and it's not going to change.
Yeah, I don't
Move
like
to
traffic.
Montana. I don't know. But if you're like, I'm sad. And I'm sad because I feel like I haven't accomplished enough in my life. Okay. You didn't make their day any harder, really. and now they have something with enough detail, if they know you, to work with and be like,
Mhm.
okay, you know. So I think that's an important thing that like causes us to fall into that trap of avoiding being vulnerable, is that we think it's gonna like burden someone with negativity, but in actuality, if we really understand what we're feeling, we can probably give them something that's just a fact. You know what I mean? This is not really shaded one way or the other. I mean, it's our problem after all. It's not their problem. So, you know, they shouldn't necessarily be burdened by it.
And then also, if we get better at sharing just what's going on, what's truly going on,
Yeah.
then you're gonna get better at when someone else shares what's really going on with them.
100%.
You'll help be able to be with them
Yeah,
without trying to like
exactly.
do what you do to your own feelings, just like bury them or
Yeah.
shame them, you know, and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
guilty
until
of.
you can do it yourself, you really should probably not that cut out to do it for other people. Yeah.
So that's been what I've been thinking about with vulnerability.
It's so different though, depending on the context of the relationship though. Like I struggle, so the place where I struggle the most socially, I think, is work. It's so difficult. Like figuring out how to behave at work with colleagues and among different colleagues. Because man, people are so different. It's wild how different people are in terms of who you sort of present based on different people. And ideally, you get to a place where you're just one thing. You're just you, and everybody just takes it or leaves it. That's kind of being vulnerable. But I think for a lot of us, we get a little bit caught in that trap of, you know, trying to play towards a certain way because we think somebody prefers it, or evidence has shown us they do. That's the worst part of all, is you can actually mold yourself more into something you're not because you can tell someone prefers it. So that's called getting lost, right? My boss likes people who talk really fast and are really high achieving and are A-types, but I'm not an A-type. I'm an introvert and I'm quiet. And I like to think a little slower about things before I make a decision. But if I want to stay at this company, I'm going to have to think fast and talk loud and be an A-type. You know, so over time you find that like that's who you are at work, but it's not who you really are. So that's a problem, right? So you're out of alignment. But to get back to the point, in the work context, I find it challenging for that exact reason. I feel like your survival depends on how you behave, and so you're putting a lot of weight and importance on it, and that gets me caught in my head more about what I say and do in a way that's almost self-defeating. And I've been trying at work to just be more relaxed in my skin and just be like, just talk to people like you would talk to like your family, like kind of, you know what I mean? Like there's always a little filter there because you can't say everything you think. You can't tell them all your vulnerabilities. There are levels of professionalism that, you know, limit what we can express at work. But like, generally speaking, I'm trying to not try so much at work.
How's that going?
It's hard, man. It's hard. It's easier with some colleagues than others. Weirdly, some people just, no matter how bad you want it to be different, they just bring out a certain energy. There's a dynamic between you that just never quite feels comfortable. You know? And it doesn't mean you don't work well together necessarily even. It just means you don't click in the same way you'd like to, or that you do with some other colleagues.
Is this when you're out filming, or?
Yeah, this isn't my day-to-day job. You know, it's just different with different people that I work with, and you know, I mean, it's just hard. I'll come home and I'll be like, man, why'd I say that? That was so stupid.
Do you do that a lot? Yeah,
all
like
the time,
thinking,
bro. All the time.
Going back and replaying moments of things you said and
It
did.
happens to me throughout the day, which is the worst part, because that means that you're not present anymore. You're in your head, which means you're more likely to miss something, like an order, which is kind of like the way my work is, or a request, whatever it may be at your work. You know, if you miss an order, now you really have given them cause to not want to hire you, or you know, they are thinking like, all right,
What's that? What, an order? In
like, go get this. You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, and then you turn around and you realize like, wait, what did they want me to get? Because you were so in your head about the thing you said 5 minutes before.
Yeah.
And now you're doubly fucked because now you've really given them a cause to be like, come on, man, what's up? You're slipping. Like, I need you to be on it. You know? And then you're like, oh God, they're really upset with me. And then you go back in your head even more. Guess what? The same shit happens 5 minutes later. because you're all in your head now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that happens to me with work. And I mean, I am an anxious person, so it makes sense. I'm sure it's not like that for everybody. But I think for a lot of people, there's, I mean, in varying degrees, that's happening for most of us, you know? And that's, I think, what makes vulnerability important at work is like what I was saying about like just being yourself and not thinking too much about it. I think that does require an amount of vulnerability because you're basically saying, you know what, I give up. The more I try to be this or that for people, the more I just fail every single time. It just can't, it doesn't work. I don't feel good. I still mess up. They still don't like me, whatever. At some point, ideally, I guess, you just give up. You say, I'm done with the act. This is who I am. And probably people are going to, you're going to, it's going to sort itself out. Some people are going to be like, I don't really click with you. I don't really want to work with you. But you know what? Good riddance. Right? You don't want to work with those people because you can't be yourself. And other people are going to be like, okay, I feel more comfortable with this person than ever. They seem really like relaxed and cool these days, you know? And so you gravitate hopefully towards people who just like your real MO, you know? But when you're, again, luxury.
That's a luxury?
That's a luxury, man, because that means you can basically afford to miss work opportunity. Not everybody can. You know? Some people have to go to work for that dick boss that they can't stand. They have to. They've got children to feed. They do not have another offer. That is what they're going to have to live with. And that is a whole nother thing. You know?
You got to swallow the...
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a hard one.
But I want to hear your take on it because again, I think like vulnerability is the answer there in the workplace as well. You know, when you have the luxury of,
in the sense of what, like, you know, this is how I work, and like, of course you try your best, but you know that you can't make everyone happy all the time, and
exactly
allowing the possibility that someone might not click with you.
Yeah.
Vulnerability in that sense?
Yeah, allowing it, being willing to share something, a joke that you think is funny, that, maybe nobody laughs, or, maybe it was too inappropriate, or, you know, like the vulnerability that you can exercise at work, it can probably make your work experience a lot better and build bonds. Because people can tell, everyone knows what real is. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
We all know. Like,
you know when someone's bullshit.
You can't really fake real. Like, there are some master deceivers in the world. They're called like psychopath serial killers and all that shit, double agents, all that. But like by and large, people seem to have a good sense for when people are being real or they're not. They're doing an act. And so that's the thing. Like when you're vulnerable at work, you're like, all right, I feel like I can read this person. Now I feel like I can trust this person. Guess who I want to go to war with, aka work with? People who I can trust. You know, who I can read, who I don't think are playing chess, you know, like I don't really want to feel that they're like trying to figure out how to outmaneuver me or whatever it may be, right? So I think that like for me, that's like the constant battle. Is like, how do I become more vulnerable at work and still succeed, still have people like me, you know? Because I feel like I'm a total weirdo.
Yeah. What is success? What does success look like for you?
I mean, success for me would be doing work that I find meaningful and gainfully employing. You know, that would be success. And that's a hard thing to get both.
Yeah.
Is what I'm finding.
Yeah.
It's like for some reason there's just more money in guns and tobacco than there is like, you know, climate care, you know, and like plastic pollution collection. And there just seems to be more money in that stuff.
And there's I mean, part of you is like, oh, I need the money, and then another part rejects the idea of promoting guns and tobacco.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-money. Let's be clear. I'm not anti-money. If money and the cause align, great, perfect. You know, it's just that so often I find that things that pay me best are not in alignment with what gives me meaning in my life, what makes me feel like I'm doing something that is helpful. You know what I mean? I think that's, for me, that's definitely the goal, is to do something helpful. And I one time in a meditation, I got to this place of certainty on the idea that what everybody really wants is to have a living legacy.
Mm.
Now, that can look like different things. That can look like an endowment, a financial contribution. You create a foundation that's going to live on past you.
Mm.
For most people, I think it's kids. They want to have kids. Kids are kind of an extension of them, after all, and that lives on. And then there will be kids after those kids that are kind of an extension of them and lives on, right?
Mm.
And then the third one would be creating life outside of humans. So you plant trees, you care for the earth, stewardship of the land. You know, you do something that changes the face of the earth, literally, and it lives on past you. Art also kind of falls into that category. You created life. You created something that has this energy that resonates with people.
Mm-hmm.
It changes people's lives when they, connect with
Yeah.
it. And so those three things, I think, are the three ways that you can have a living legacy. And I think that that's actually what we're all really chasing in our deathbed wish, so to speak. You know, I'm not sure if we're also conscious of it until we start to get older. I think older people are real conscious of it. I think they think about it a lot, especially as they start to really sense the mortality. I think they're like, oh fuck, you know. And then I think with children, I think that's an urge that a lot of people feel much earlier. You know, not everybody obviously, but I think women feel it. I think a lot of men too. You know, they're like, I really want to have kids. It's important to me to have family and have that legacy. They don't look at it as a legacy per se, but I think that's what's up.
Turning 30 made me want to start.
Yeah.
Getting ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had never thought about it.
So what's at the base of that desire? That's the question, right? Fear of.
But it could be love also. I mean, a kind of wanting a. I've never questioned why. It was more of a feeling. It could feel. It could give purpose. And it could be. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. It could be.
Is it legacy?
It could be love motivated more than fear motivated. That's true. I think there's a fear of mortality and a fear of pointlessness for a lot of people. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. Is they're like, what if my life has no point? What if when I die, people forget me within 2 generations, and that's just it? No one ever thinks about me ever. I did nothing in my life that was ever recorded or noteworthy or anything. And first of all, my answer to that would be everybody's life has a contribution, a ripple effect in terms of how energy affects energy. It's simple cause and effect. Like literally energy affects energy. So if you are nice in your life, you created energy or a cause and effect that is beneficial to society, to this living organism, this mass organism that continues to go on past your life. So you can have a positive effect, you can have a negative effect. Obviously, it's all going to be a little bit mixed, but the idea is to have net positive. So that's your legacy, and that's fine. That's a normal person's life, that's their legacy. Normal is even a judgmental word, just most people, that's their legacy. What is the net of your contribution in terms of, the way you acted? But anyway, mortality and the pointlessness of your life is a big fear for a lot of people.
Not knowing why you're here.
Exactly. What if there's just no point, So I'm going to make sure there is a point, and I'm going to leave something behind,
Is that weakness?
I mean,
Maybe
I think it's
not.
human.
It's humanness,
hubris,
right?
Hubris, as they say, like, vanity, mankind's need to be important.
Or is it, there's like a humanness to it also. I mean, like a...
Right, like
it could be pointless.
Thinking about it, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's the human condition of.
Right.
You go into this world, and especially people in big cities who've moved a lot and maybe are not.
Yeah. In
these multi-generational families, it gets harder to figure out, well, who am I? What am I doing here? And it might be human to just want to know that you were here for something, that it meant something, 100%. Or to experience some sense of healthy joy.
Yeah.
Instead of just being, I mean, how...
Just
I was listening to a podcast, this guy was saying about how do you like you can ask this question,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps point you to what your purpose is, and it's like, why haven't I killed myself yet?
Oh wow.
It's a pretty strong one.
Yeah, it's a strong one.
And for me, I thought of family, and I thought of what you were talking about right now. I thought of
I love
like
that
because
question
I
so
think
much.
because I think I can contribute something.
Right. Exactly.
I can contribute
Exactly.
something,
Yeah.
and that keeps coming back every time I ask that question. Like,
Yeah.
why don't I kill myself?
Yeah.
Because I think I can contribute something,
Mm-hmm.
and it that's a different way of living than if you go out living like I need to get and get and get and
Right.
get and get.
Right.
I think.
Right. What can I give?
How can I align to that? I don't know. I still want to get. I still want to take stuff.
Sure.
And so I'm not pure in that. I mean, I still have these desires. I want to experience, and I want to. But I also want to. Starting to think of and still lost as to how to align to that idea of like what can I contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay, so how old are you, by the way?
30.
30. Okay. Yeah. Brooke was asking. My girlfriend was asking.
Yeah.
Like, how old is he? And I was like, he's like my age, but you're a little bit younger. I'm 35.
Yeah.
Yeah.
35.
But I was like, he's more mature than me, so whatever. I was like, so he seems our age.
I'm mature at times, and then I can be immature at times as well.
Fair. Yeah. I can say
Good
that
at
for sure.
times and bad at times. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about this. How we know ourselves at different levels, and one of these is like facts about ourselves. I'm 30. I'm living in LA, etc., etc. I have 2 brothers, etc., etc. And then like the ideas we have about ourselves.
Oh man, those
Yeah,
are dangerous.
those are big ones, right?
Yeah.
I'm a nice guy. I
Right.
am mature. I am
Right.
good, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But then there's this other one that I think I didn't really pay attention to if it contradicted the ideas that I had about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like your moment to moment experience of life. Like maybe I think I'm kind, but in the moment I'm really not thinking kind thoughts about, I don't know, someone crossing the street too slowly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, am I being kind in that moment?
Yeah.
And if so, if the answer is no, then, you know, so kind of
Yeah, what's
using
going
the
on
moment
there?
to
Is that
moment,
true?
the relationship, paying attention to the relationship between your ideas of yourself
Yeah.
and your moment to moment experience, and allowing there to be an interplay between those two, where your moment to moment experience updates the ideas of yourself that you have.
Yeah.
To have, I think that, you know, I've been thinking also about what is maturity, and I think there's something to maturity there in that sense of like having a more nuanced self-image of your, having a more nuanced self-image that's informed by what you're actually doing,
moment
right?
to
Like,
moment.
oh, maybe
Yeah.
you don't think you should throw trash out on the street,
Right.
but one day you just didn't find a trash can, and like you just put it on the street, you
Didn't
know?
even think about it.
And you
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
well, you did think about it. You
okay,
said, oh,
okay,
maybe
okay.
I'll come back. I'll go throw it away. But you
Yeah.
know
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you were
yeah.
not going to do that.
Yeah.
So the ways that we deceive ourselves
Yeah.
to maintain an idea of ourselves,
Right.
I'm being very aware of that.
Yeah.
So I'm mature at times, and I've done immature things as well.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
the ideas that we have about ourselves are dangerous, but the false ideas that we have about ourselves are the most dangerous, right? So, I mean, you go around thinking, I'm a really nice guy, but actually you're super manipulative, and most of your colleagues kind of want to leave the room when you walk into it, you know, like that's a really dangerous false idea that person has, that they're a nice guy, because it's enabling. They're just going to keep, you know what I mean?
Enabling how?
It's because they think they're nice.
Yeah.
They don't think they need to change at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, the more you can get to the bottom of, are my ideas about myself accurate, the better. You know, and that's what's great about therapy, is they can kind of help you suss that out. So can good friends, family. They're great at it, except they're a little biased, especially your family. You know, mom's always going to tell you, you're great, you know, and it's like, am I? But I mean, it is a really good point you make. Like, if you, moment to moment in your life, reflect on, is that in alignment with what I told myself I am or not? You know, like, that probably is a much better way to get to the bottom of who you truly are. It's just looking at your day-to-day actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm disciplined,
Right.
but in reality, I wake up and I eat cake to start the day, and
yeah. I'm dragging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there has to be it's a living thing. The self-image can't be this concrete.
Right. It changes.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it does change.
And how, yeah, and like you said, there's an element of blindness if it's if you can never update that self-image.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't matter what you do. You're always a nice guy, or you're always kind, and you're always mature. But the reality is more complex. The reality of a person is more complex than putting a label on someone that, oh, you're kind and that's it. Kind when? 90% of the time. What about when someone cuts you off, and are you kind there? Oh, but that doesn't count because
they did something.
Yeah. So you don't. I think that, and that I fell into this trap, and I would like discount things that don't fit in with the idea that I had about myself. I think I did that. And people try to tell you at times, like, hey, no, you're actually. I thought I was a good listener.
Interesting.
And then some people told me they didn't feel heard, and I didn't hear that because that didn't fit in with my idea that I'm a good listener.
Yeah, you're like,
how ironic.
Their read is wrong.
Yeah. You know, and so I think that's something that I want to keep paying attention to.
It's hard though, without having a mirror, someone else to tell you, to straighten it out.
And that's where relationships.
Relationships, dude.
Will be that mirror.
Yeah, they will tell you. And to get, if you'll forgive me to go back to the work thing, I mean, that's another place where a lot will be revealed. Because in the work context, people do not have to be nice, and they do not have to tolerate your bullshit, especially if you're a subordinate. I mean, if you're the boss of a company or you're a CEO, you can probably get away with a lot more. But also, there's a lot more spotlight on you, so maybe not. You know what I mean? You are under a lot of scrutiny. And you can't really cross the line, or you probably will be published in a paper, what you did, right? So all of us at work are under a bit of scrutiny, and maybe it's for the best. It's the best kind of social conditioning, maybe, because basically, like, the village is, assessing you and giving you feedback and helping kind of keep you in the middle of the road. You know what I mean?
But now people are working from home. More and more people are working from home. And I realized I was working from home for a long time. I didn't I didn't have real life mirrors. And maybe that's why I went and gravitated towards working from home. Maybe I didn't want those mirrors.
Maybe not.
Maybe it was more comfortable just to like be in my own ideas of everything and then not be challenged on them.
How did you feel when that change happened? Like, how long was that change? Over what period of time?
2017. That's when I started living. Moved to Mexico and I started working online.
So prior to that, you were working in person?
I mean, I was doing a bunch of
Yeah. And so then it became all your work was on a computer.
Online.
Did you notice a change, or were you still pretty social in your day to day? So it didn't really like.
In the beginning, I had family. I had family member, like cousins, aunts, uncles, and when I was done with work, I would often be spending time with them.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would still be social.
Yeah. Did you ever have a period where you were like pretty isolated?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember when. You can be around people and still be isolated.
100%. That's very
so
true.
It's a very different thing. Yeah. Like we talked about earlier, right? Let's say you just hide everything. You don't even know what you feel, and you can't even express that. And you're putting on, I thought I was being real. I still think I thought I was, but now I was limited by how real I could be with myself. 'Cause I pushed away a lot of things. So in that way, isolated.
Yeah. Internally isolated, you mean? Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
And I mean, the
Yeah.
last 6 months
Yeah.
were a bit
Yeah.
quite actually
Yeah,
isolated.
yeah. Coming out of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, I mean that's always an introspective time. I feel for most people, can be a little bit,
Yeah.
can be really beneficial.
It's good.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had to
yeah,
I had to break to see all the things I hadn't seen.
yeah. There's usually like a little rock bottom, isn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
At the end of a relationship, it's like,
And I'm glad because now, with what I've learned and what I'm learning, I will not hurt people
mm-hmm.
in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
and I will do my best to watch out for how my blind spots can cause someone to feel
Mm-hmm.
unseen, unheard,
Mm-hmm.
rejected, etc.
Yeah,
So it's, I mean, yeah, there's a bittersweetness to every
yeah,
important lesson
yeah.
because one is the sweetness is that you learn it, and the bitterness is that you wish you had learned it sooner. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you were gonna say like just the experience of learning it was so painful.
Well, and that too. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
but
Unnecessary
you need
part.
pain.
Exactly.
To,
Yeah, that's how you really learn.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's this whole combo has been interesting because I feel like it's actually mostly been about like relationships.
Yeah.
And it's what we kind of like hoped to talk about, but we didn't really like plan it out at all. But like even talking about like the cell phone
Yeah.
for a while, like again, that's like relational. You know, it's all relational. Either how you relate to the world or how you relate to other people. And it's like, I mean, it is the experience of life in a lot of ways. It's like our relationships with people. It's just, and you know, the world is just so populated, man. There's just people everywhere. I mean, it feels like they're coming out of the woodworks here in LA. I don't know about elsewhere, but there's so many people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them feels like a stranger. Yeah. Every single one is a unique individual life. Like sometimes I'm just kind of like stunned by it when I go out. I'm just like, oh my god, like the sheer amount of. Do you ever have those moments where you're just like, or if maybe you're like taking off or landing in a plane and it all looks like ants and you're like, the number of people on this planet, like
I remember
is crazy.
I felt that in Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
The metro,
okay, yeah.
and then just all the people moving, and there was a guy just kind of he was reading a book.
Yeah.
While walking, because he knew he was just gonna go with the crowd.
Just every day, yeah.
I just thought, or in Mexico City as well, there's this one street that leads to Zócalo, which is the big plaza that has the huge Mexican flag.
Yeah, you feel it.
Oh my God, it's just full of people.
Yeah.
But when you said that, I thought of, I was turning onto the 101, I think on Sunset, and I think if you're available, if you can work on how available you can be, and sometimes there are people out there that are available too, and the chance for some kind of connection is there. And I was about to turn. It was strange because normally when everyone in LA is driving everywhere, right, and you're in your box.
Exactly.
Isolated in a way, and
yeah.
I don't like it. But I was about to turn into the 101, and there was like some guy was pulled up, and like we made eye contact because I sometimes make eye contact with people in the car. I know, you know how people you get to the light, and then there's the person next.
Yeah.
And then many times it's like
you have the urge. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's completely.
It's
some
people,
nature.
but some people get freaked out. Like,
100%.
Like,
I'm in my bubble, dude. What
yeah,
are you doing
exactly. You're puncturing my bubble.
Exactly.
Privacy.
Exactly.
But so this happened. I turned to my right. I saw, oh, there's someone there. They're looking back. This dude is looking back. And normally, right, people will look back. But we kept it for a while, and I nodded. He nodded, and then I smiled, and he smiled, and we just smiled at each other, and it was so. It was nice, you know. It made me feel.
Yeah.
Again, I've been feeling very lonely, and like it made me feel a bit less lonely for that moment. And
like
it was,
if I wanted, I could connect with a stranger.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really up to me, kind of.
And maybe challenging the idea that we're so strangers in the first place. I mean, I feel like I already know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't met them, but I already know. I can see someone, and I already know they want to be loved. They want love. They probably want a good job or something where they are making enough money to eat. They probably like food. I like food too.
Right,
You know,
right.
we challenging the idea of strangerness in the first place maybe will allow you to come, like, treat them like
Become
you
more
already know
comfortable.
them because
Right,
you
right,
already kind of do.
right. It's true,
I
man.
think you do.
There's a lot. So many shared things.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you really, it doesn't have to be much, to have an interaction. It could be like so small, but still be like
Could be a
pretty
glance.
helpful. Exactly. Yeah, like that wave was probably helpful that day.
Yeah.
It probably made you feel better the
I
whole
felt
day.
better.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was a night, so
Yeah.
that whole night, I
Yeah.
felt like, wow.
I mean, that's the thing about the room. You mentioned the remote work, and like, I just know I've heard from a lot of people who went to remote work after COVID that it hasn't. Like, I'm getting the feeling that it hasn't been so good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the fact that it's a little bit isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know if it's gonna last. I mean, I guess it will to some degree, but I think also like there's a lot of companies that are like, all right, you'll have to come back. They value people being in the office for the company culture and like productivity and whatever. But it's probably good for people, honestly.
Or getting the best of both worlds where you can have people working remotely but together in some place. I don't know, like those co-working spaces. I don't know if I haven't done it, but
Yeah, I haven't done it either.
I wonder how that would be.
Yeah.
Maybe, does it actually bring that sense of community,
Right.
or not?
Yeah, I've wanted to try that.
Mhm.
It's so expensive here. I don't know how people afford that. It's like half your rent for no space to go and work.
Yeah.
But they also seem like they open doors for a lot of people, like networking. Like people make meaningful connections, so that makes me think that there is something to it, And what's cool about it is that you're not all doing the same thing, so there's not it feels less competitive. It's like, oh well, we're not even in the same industry. Like, of course we can just chat. Like, there's no threat. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna like give him my idea, and he's not gonna steal it and run with it. He's not gonna try to one up me because we don't work for the same boss. That kind of thing. And then just the idea of cross collaboration. Learning about other trades and other things that people are doing is probably really nice. Instead of just being at a dedicated place where it's like, well, I know what this machine is doing, this beehive is doing.
That's where I would have to try it out
Yeah.
and see. But I can imagine a shift where people are working remotely, but then they're able to get the best of both worlds.
I mean, I feel like the coffee shop is like
Yeah, we met at a coffee shop.
Yeah, you and I met at a coffee shop. We tried that thing of like engaging with a stranger. You did.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like that's a place where people go to not be alone, even though they are alone. Yeah.
But there's something even just about being in a place with other people around, and
Exactly.
the fact that so many people go. I've been going to this one in Arts District, and it's full of people.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, why are they here? Because they want to be around people.
100%.
I'm going to remember that next time if I want to start a conversation. Of course, people are working and they have to be, but yeah, people are there because they just want to be around people and as technological as we become, we still I want that.
Yeah, there's something about it that makes you feel like right in the world at the end of the day. I mean, I haven't been working as much in the last year because my industry is kind of going through a contraction, and it's just not good for you, man. Like, there's just so much of value to getting out of the house and having unexpected experiences, having to socialize with other people, feeling validated because you can contribute to something, having some purpose in that way. There's so much there. And even if you just go to the coffee shop, someone's going to look at you. You're going to catch someone looking at you. And that even is a very subtle form of validation.
Yeah.
It's like, I exist.
I exist.
She wasn't like, oh man, look at him. But she noticed me
Yeah.
as a human.
Yeah.
That's a nice feeling, I mean, if that's all you can get in a day, I would argue it's far better than nothing. It's far better than staying home.
And is that why the allure of Instagram and the like we talked about the WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
It's this kind of easier, more convenient way of getting that.
Yeah.
I exist.
Yeah, I think so.
I matter.
We really need that. Yeah, I matter to somebody.
It's even I matter is a higher level, and then I exist is like
exactly. That's your base need. I exist.
And we're at that level, yeah.
I matter is like the goal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then above that, really, it should be like, I contributed something. You know, that should really be like the goal. You know, less about whether or not you matter. You'll matter if you leave a living legacy, is what I would say.
You've been thinking about legacy, huh?
I don't think about it that much day to day. I do think that at the bottom of finding meaningful work, though, for most people, meaningful work for them looks like something that they think leaves an impact. You know, that'd be an interesting one to explode open with some other people and see if they agree with that. You know, we
about
can think
legacy?
about a couple of different like jobs that people love. You know, a couple of famous people maybe who are doing something that we know they're passionate about, and like whether or not that actually is meaningful. I think I gotta take my dog out. She's walking around too much. Yeah, you know what I mean. That would be an interesting one to talk about next. Is like, what are the qualifications that we put on like what is meaningful that people can do with their lives?
Well, it involves people.
That's true.
Whatever it is, it involves people.
Exactly. That's a very good point.
Right? I can't imagine anything that just doesn't involve
it
anyone.
can involve the planet, but that affects people directly.
Affects people.
So
Even if you're doing like hardcore math, eventually it's to, you know,
advanced civilization probably.
So it's connected to people.
Yeah, it's like for the big organism. It's like for the totality of humanity. Yeah, that makes sense. But it would be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah. All right. Well, in the next one, we'll touch on that.
Yeah, man. This was good though.
It's good talking to you.
Yeah. Likewise.
We'll end it.
All right.
We'll end it there.